You're perfect. What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
How's Terran life been going?
I got to 3750. I think I stabled around there, for both my ranked and unranked. I
Nice.
found a build that I found two builds that I really like in TvZ and TvP,
Okay.
and I started to practice them a lot against computers, trying to hit the timings. I think that's part of the reason why I got this bump.
Okay.
Um, but I'm having problems in TvT. So my TvT win rate this season is like 20%. I'm at a point where I'm scared to send my Reaper into the opponent's base, and then I was trying to do the same thing, so find a build that has clear timing so I can practice against computers and um, at least not screw up when I'm not disturbed. So the build that I found was the build that I'm currently trying to work on is Uthermal had a build. It's a 5 Reaper, 3 Hellion into 2 Raven and tanks. I think it's something like that. And but still, I think I have other problems in my TVT. So I'm thinking to go over TVT today.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Uh, do you want me to look at the Euthermal build itself, or do you want me to look at one of your replays as well?
I'll just send you the replay as usual.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, TVT. Like, once we start getting to like high level TVT, uh, well, I'll do my best to break it down for you as much as I can,
mhm,
and we'll see what's going on there. Okay, I gotta see your replay. I'm loading it up. I'll share my screen for you on Discord.
mhm.
All right. So we'll also talk about like what kind of position you should be in based on what you're doing and what your opponent's doing as well. Because there are times when you do go aggressive when sometimes you should probably not be aggressive. As weird as that sounds, it just depends on what you see. Okay. So far your build is fine. Like double gas. You're gonna go Hellion quick factory. You're scouting. You get locked out from him on his ramp. You scout the ramp. You see a double depot, just like what you have. Um, yeah, everything seems fine. The guy took a depot a little bit later than you as well, but you're not even close to blocking anyway, so neither is he. So it's not that big of a deal. Automatically, though, whenever someone does double depot like this, you can already assume
Mhm.
it's double gas.
Okay.
Like, the odds of them going for one gas with double depot this quickly is, I would say, not super likely. I feel like this person probably is not going for a command center, like immediately. So they're going for the wall off instead. Because if they were gonna go for a command center, they could make it before the depot, and now all they're doing is delaying the command center because they make a depot. If that was what they wanted to do, so they still could do it, but it's less likely. And you should know if it's a command center or not based on the fact that when your Reaper comes out, you can figure that out as well. So yeah, just automatically straight off, you should your builds are going to be similar already. Is how you should feel so far. Nice micro on the SUV there. That was good. Letting him in is not so good because I think he might have just saw your oh, he didn't actually see it. Okay, so he only saw the one gas, so he didn't actually get a lot of read there. But yeah, in the future, definitely try to not let him in, because if he would have saw your factory, it that could change how he wants to play it, and he might do something to counter what you're doing in a way, because there's no more question here as to what the opener could be entirely. Not a huge deal though.
Mhm.
Okay. Something I would recommend in the future would be like, first thing, definitely don't have a weak SCV. Like, this SCV was getting smashed by the other SCV for a while. You saved it, which was great, but you're building it now. You're having it build a command center, which means this SCV has no time to evacuate if an enemy Reaper comes over and attacks you. and you don't know if he's going to attack you from here, which is a Reaper jump spot, or if he's going to attack you from here, or if he's just going to straight up run at you from the front of your base. Chances are high that he'll go for Reaper. A lot of people go for Reaper, but I would say your third depot should always go to one of the Reaper jump spots. Probably this one would be the better one, just because it's closer to your SCVs where they are. And this guy should probably have been transferred with a healthy one, so you had to have the red one back here. That way you could have lost no SCVs. Because losing the SCV, which means then also the command center stops building, is pretty shit. You lose probably like 30 seconds now on that command center of time having to deal with this. Or maybe like 15. You reacted pretty quickly, but still, you lost a lot of time there.
Am I supposed to put down the starport like around now?
So again, this is where it... I haven't actually memorized the euthermal build, so I might not get it perfectly, like with how he does it. But but what I can tell you though is it really depends on what you want to do with it. If you wanted to put the starport down earlier than later, it would incentivize that you're more likely going to go attack him. You should be the aggressor if you're going to invest more and more into that. Just like if you're making a lot of Reapers like this, that's also kind of an aggressive thing to do. Making Reapers and sitting on them defensively is not the greatest thing in the world. So I would say because of the fact that you're making Reapers, you should definitely make the starport. Like, these are aggressive tendencies that should be like utilized. If you were going to play defensive, it would have made more sense to make like Marines and less gas and like a faster command center, stuff like that. But since you're double gassing it, I would say you definitely need to have a starport down already. Like, you should probably start the starport immediately after the factory's done, and then keep your Reapers rolling, keep your Hellions rolling as much as you can, so you can do a quick timing attack with. Because I assume what this is going to be is like you jump up the cliff and you drop Hellions in his base or some shit, right? And you do a timing attack or something like that?
It's just go to poke his natural.
Okay, okay. So you lost another SCV there. A little bit painful. Not like this depot right here. Definitely put your in TvT specifically. I would definitely recommend putting your depot there. That way, because it's the only entrance into your base. That way you have more time to react to it, and ideally not losing any SCVs at all. Also, another tip. Whenever a player does what he did, where he like attacks really aggressive with that Reaper constantly, and he does it to the point to where he's like willing to let it die to kill an SCV. That is a fact that tells you that this guy's not going for multiple Reapers, because if he is, he has no idea what he's doing, and he's playing really, really bad. It's that Reaper to this guy is just a scout that ideally would like to do some damage to your economy, if possible, but it's really just a scout. So if that's what he's doing, you definitely now should be the aggressor with your Reapers. You don't have to worry about running into like 3 Reapers of him over here, and you're like, oh shit, I came at a weird angle and I'm losing my stuff. Like he's just, you're also confirming with an SCV right now, but even if the SCV wasn't here, you would already know he's not going Reapers. Because it makes no sense to throw one away and then keep making more Reapers.
Okay.
Like it's a unit that definitely scales better with the more you have. Because it does damage pretty quickly, but it's pretty squishy as well. So you want to have, if you're going to make a lot of Reaper, you want to commit to it and get the DPS out with all of them together and not just sack them one by one. So yeah, it's super late starport. So now your timing definitely will be pretty late. And I would say, again, in this game specifically, I would, if I were there with you, I would have been like, you should just go across the map right now. Because he's not going to have, like you even saw a Marine there too. So I'm glad you're going out across the map. And now you're going to go into a tech lab on the factory, and you're going to probably go into Marines, I would assume, and go into a bio game, which is fine. I would highly recommend as well. I don't know if he does this in his build, but you have 2 ways to go about this now. Either macro out of it or all in, like do another follow-up timing in the near future, which would be, do you want to make a 3rd command center right now, or do you want to make more production? I would recommend probably command center, personally. Okay, so yeah, I would definitely say you could probably prio that a little faster than you already even have this game. But I think right now you're probably paying too much attention to your dudes here. That's a little bit of a mistake there. But yeah, this doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be babysat as hard as it is because you know for a fact this guy's not going Reapers. If you think about it the way we talked about.
Okay.
And right there too. I'm really glad. That sucks that you lost the Hellion that got separated. And for a second you went back and started chasing it. I really would suggest not chasing it and go to his base right now, because that one Cyclone can run you around the map all day, and you're gonna miss out on so much potential damage you can do here. So the fact that you turned around is huge. You should definitely force him to play defensive and attack him, because you are the one with the advantage in aggression. But it's not going to last for long because Reapers expire pretty quickly as soon as like tanks exist or air units like Banshee exists or something like that. Like Reapers become awful then. So you're doing a ton of damage now. You should do a ton of damage here. But up to this point so far, the reasoning as to why you would attack, does that make sense?
Yeah, because I made a lot of Reapers and Hellions. And
Yeah.
then he doesn't have Reapers and Hellions. But I mean, like, I'm actually not sure. So basically what I'm doing every game is I'm just diving with this group.
Yep.
Because
Honestly, you should. Eventually, you always should, because Reaper Hellion sucks defensively. Like, it's only good if you're also... This is probably the best way to say it. Reaper Hellion is only good defensively until you have something better, and then it's awful. So like Reaper Hellion would be good if you were worried that he had the same thing and you were like, shit, I don't want to leave my base, and suddenly when I'm like over here, he's hitting my natural with the same thing. If that's the case, then Reaper Hellion can actually be good defensively because you're fighting someone who's going to be aggressive to you as well. But as soon as you have like a siege tank or a Cyclone or some, like, let's say 4 Marines and a Cyclone, you do not need to have Reaper Hellion playing defensive anymore, because you have something better, and it will only grow as it gets, you know, the better thing will only grow in size as you make more of it as the game goes on. Like tanks will exist, and medevacs will come out, and more bio will come out, which makes Reaper Hellion even worse. So this unit comp of Reaper Hellion, it's like a, you should look at this comp as a transition. That's all it is. It's a transition that offers control. So it's not something you're going to make a lot of. You're not going to like stay on this tech of Reaper Hellion all game. It's not like your in-game choice. It's just something you're going to make at the start to assert control of the map, which can then also be defensive if your opponent is doing something that also is asserting control of the map, like the same thing as you, until you have something better. So like, for instance, you would be better off if you actually were getting attacked at your natural by his Reaper Hellion and yours were like right here. If you had Cyclone Hellion, or Cyclone Marine tank, whatever, in the place of Reaper Hellion, because if you can guarantee you have enough units now to defend your base and not take damage if he shows up, you're fine. And then if he's not ready for it, you can do damage to his economy. So, long story short, if you can confirm he's not going for multi-Reaper, you should assert control of the map quickly. But if he is going for something that looks like what you're doing as well, like he's going for Hellion Reaper too, it's probably better to take control defensively of like positions like the ramp or something like that, to like try to get an advantage in the fight. Where like if he comes up a ramp and you get free shots because he can't see you yet, and then if you win that fight, then you go across the map and attack because now his units are dead. Or go ahead.
What's the exact definition of map control? I'm always confused about that.
So you can pick where the fight happens, and more often than not, and that comes, the reason why you can pick where the fight happens is because your units have a mobility advantage. Like, it's like saying a cheetah can pick where the fight happens against a turtle because it's faster. It doesn't have to take, like, if a turtle's like gonna fight in a little doorway and it's hiding its shell, it has the advantage. But if a turtle's gonna fight in the middle of the fucking open, the cheetah has the advantage. But the cheetah can pick which fight happens first because it can move to the location faster and pounce on the turtle. It's the same, like a Hellion can pounce on a Marine. So if you go Marine first with no stim pack, no combat shield, nothing, no mobility, a Hellion can always choose where the fight is going to happen. So that's why this would be a defensive unit, because the only way a Marine can have an advantage is if it fights defensively where it needs to protect something. But if a Marine was way the fuck over here in the middle of the map, then a Hellion could just run around it and do whatever it wanted. So map control is literally who has more mobility. First and foremost. That is definitely what that means. The second part of map control, generally speaking, is who has invested into more power of army. This is not... This concept takes a backseat to mobility, but it's still important. Whoever has more power in their army also has map control. So if you have mobility and you have more power than your opponent, you definitely have map control, which you definitely do this game, because Marines, even if they fought you mid-map, would lose to you, because Reaper Hellion will fucking destroy Marines when they don't have Stimpak or Combat Shield. But as soon as he has Stimpak and Combat Shield, and he has Medivacs, now suddenly he has power over you. But that doesn't happen immediately. It takes time to tech into that. But Reaper Hellion that does happen immediately. You don't need any upgrades for this. It's just, it is what it is. It's already at like full power, because you're not going to go into Blue Flame. No one really ever does that. And by the time you would get Blue Flame anyways, the Hellion phase of being effective is like over anyways, so it's irrelevant. So like this is at full power of what it's going to be in early game.
So map control is not about vision. It's
No.
about I can put my units wherever I want on the map.
It's about like you saying, essentially, I can do whatever I want on the map. That's the main point of map control. And that's why I said mobility is the number one there and power is number two. Because let's just say you have mobility advantage and your opponent has power advantage, and you guys both go on the map. You could always run around him and go hit something that's weak. And he has to make a choice now to base trade, which is not always going to be... If the person who is slower starts the base trade after the person who's faster, that's always a disadvantage. You don't ever want to be someone who's base trading 15 seconds after your opponent is already killing your workers. Like you show up after your whole natural middle line is already dead. That's a terrible way to base trade, because then all you'd have to do to counter that is like evacuate all your SCVs into the high ground and then just guard your base on like a choke point. And then suddenly you're at an advantage. So mobility is always better for map control, but again, power is still really relevant. It's just, it always takes a backseat to mobility.
Okay.
And yeah, the last thing, you can do whatever you want on the map. That's what map control means. It has nothing to do with vision. Map vision is map vision. But if anyone says map control, they're talking about vision, they're not talking about the right thing. It's map control is literally who actually controls the map. Like who is the one who is able to move out and not be afraid.
Okay. So ideally, after my dive here, I should have backup units at my home to defend.
Wait, are you talking about how your Reaper and Hellion are dying to the Marines right now, or like you're trading?
I'm just saying, like in the general like game that I'm doing right now, because I'm having 3 Hellion, 5 Reapers, and I'm just doing the dive. But so they will eventually die, right? And
yes.
After that, I should have at least a few Marines and a Cyclone at home defending.
Yes.
Sorry.
The last thing I was going to say is, you don't need to wait for like the way you didn't wait this game and you moved out before you had Marines and Cyclone defending you. It's totally fine if your opponent is not doing something like Reaper Hellion, because he's going to defend himself. He has no way to really like control the map. He needs to defend. So you leaving yourself open like this is totally fine. This game particularly.
Okay.
But yeah.
So if
sorry, go ahead. I'm keep interrupting you.
That's fine. Oftentimes, like when I dive, there are a few things happening at this point. Either they have a bunker or they have tanks. If they have a bunker, I sometimes just run in and try to kill workers. If they have tanks, I'm actually not sure if diving is still the right choice.
So that would be a situation where if you actually had a medevac with this, you could make a choice to go around the tank or the bunker. Like for instance, if you made a medevac faster with this and you wanted to really commit to that, and you wanted to do a little bit, you have more options to be aggressive here, and you saw a tank or a bunker that was guarding the natural, you could just load up your Hellions. This is something I said at the very start of this lesson when I was like, "Are you doing this thing?" You could load up your Hellions in the medevac, jump your Reapers in the high ground, and unload your Hellions in the high ground, and then hit the main middle line instead. Because at that point, if he does have a tank, or if he does have bunker with Marines, that natural is going to be harder to penetrate or like do damage to, which is totally real. It's fine. And at that point, you're already kind of beyond the point of Hellion Reaper being super effective. The guy is playing extremely defensive, and it is 100% in your best interest to trade off your Hellion Reaper in the hopes of trying to kill as many SCVs as possible. So a medevac is not mandatory, but if you had one, it could make it more effective in a way to bounce around the defense of the Terran, the other guy.
Should I throw a scan before?
No, I definitely don't. I don't think so. You want to definitely avoid scanning early game because it's mules are the only way you're going to really be able to like really hit your timing solid. You really don't want to sacrifice one of your first like 3 mules to scan just to see if it's okay to attack or not, because realistically what you can do instead is run a Reaper in and let it get hit and then back it up, and a tank will not one-shot a Reaper and a bunker will not one-shot a Reaper no matter what's inside of it.
Okay.
And then it will just regen and you're like, cool, and now I know what he has.
Okay.
Just make sure you're not letting a Hellion go first, because if you let a Hellion go first and a Hellion gets shot by a tank or something, then that's not going to regen, obviously, and you're actually going to have a weaker Hellion now, when it didn't need to be like that. But yeah, I mean, even if, hypothetically, even if you don't have a medevac, and let's say you're pushing medevac lists, okay? Let's say when you make your starport, immediate tech lab, because you want to go for Ravens right away, you're skipping the medevac, which is totally a viable thing to do, too. Not gonna lie, when I played Terran, that's what I did most of the time. I didn't usually make a medevac with this push. I just did Hellion Reaper when I was doing it, like something similar. And what you could do instead is if you're like, oh, there's a bunker here, or there's a tank here, or something like that, you could take all your Reapers, only your Reapers, run in the high ground and run around and go behind his middle line and be annoying as shit while he's overly defending his natural. And as soon as he brings his units away from the natural to come back and help the main, you then run the Hellions in the south side of the natural and just start slaughtering SCVs with whatever Hellions you have.
Okay.
So you drag them away, then you go in the natural with the units that can't go around it.
The other thing is that this phase of the game, I'm actually not sure what he's doing. I can only guess by his unit composition. Is that the right thing to do?
You should already know. You shouldn't know how aggressive he's going to be, but you should know what his plan is already. This guy is definitely going bio. Because first, like, he's made a medevac. He's also left the reactor on the barracks for the entire time. So he has no intentions of like harassing your economy with the Hellions or anything like that. He hasn't been going for reactored Hellions, which is like Hellions are a way better synergy with mech overall, because Hellions are more self-sufficient than Marines are. Because again, you don't need upgrades for Hellions to be effective. Whereas you kind of do need upgrades for Marines to be effective. So the fact that he's invested into a medevac and he's continuously making a lot of Marines definitely means he's going bio. Like the likelihood of bio is super high. And then on top of that, he also has shown you that he has a natural. So you're not getting like one base gas all in by some like quick battlecruiser build or some shit like that. You know, it's basically at least going to be a 2-base setup, maybe a 3-base setup. So what that means is if it was like a 2-base setup, you'd probably be getting all in by like 6 minutes, okay? With like a real like stim pack timing with maybe like 2 tanks and like 2 medevacs or something like that. But if it's not a 2-base all in setup, then the likelihood of you getting attacked by like 7+ is more realistic for like a standard kind of a playstyle. The reason why that is because if this guy goes for a third command center behind 111 like what you did, he physically can't have a large army by like 6 minutes. It's going to be very lopsided, and it'll probably also have no upgrades on bio by that point. The only way he can hit a timing that's solid by 6 minutes is if he makes another barracks really early, like now, or like maybe even 30 seconds ago, and then has like like stim pack being upgraded already, and he's going to do like a stim timing at 6 minutes. That's the only way that would work, because nobody will do a timing attack with a bunch of unupgraded Marines unless there's like a lot of tanks. And this guy doesn't even have a tank yet, so there's no prio on that either. Like, it's not like this guy's gonna have like 5 tanks or something really fast.
Okay.
So there's his first tank, and he's still making Marines. So the best thing you can do right now is literally run away from this, go into the main, go behind it, and kill more SCVs. But the fact that you're doing that is perfect. Definitely, that's fucked up though. Like, you definitely made a mistake there. I would say the second you saw that, that was great. That he was pulling SCVs down to you. Just take a left, and then go behind the mineral line and poke him as you like kite upwards, and you can get a scout of the entire top part of the base here. And you can also, like, there's two things that are great about him pulling SCVs. The first thing is that he's running SCVs at Reapers, which is going to make it really easy for Reapers to get more shots off, because you're going to be able to shoot them as they chase you. Because Reapers are faster, it'll easily happen that way. The second thing is he's not mining minerals. Even if he's not losing SCVs, and you keep shooting a different SCV every time, hypothetically, the fact that he's not mining minerals or gas, all of his SCVs are being pulled, besides like 2, that's so good for you, because he's just losing mining time in so many ways now. So the longer these Reapers stay alive is also a massive bonus for you. And you might be looking at the Cyclone or something. You probably look at the Cyclone, which is why this happened. But this is something that I would say shouldn't be happening, because this should be rallied to like right here. Like, these units shouldn't be, like, there's no reason for them to be sitting in the middle of your base like this. They should absolutely be right here.
Shouldn't the first Cyclone be rallied to the edge of the base?
So think about this for a second, okay? Think about this for a second. This is why when you start remembering every little bit of the game, it all starts to make a lot of sense. And all this like matters a shitload. So you pushing right now, again, it made sense because he's not going for a similar comp. And you look at this for a second. You saw this. A Cyclone that caught your Hellion. And you even considered, do I want to go back and fight that? You're like, no, I should go to the natural, which we're like, yep, that's a fucking good idea. Immediately, these buildings should be rallied right here while you're getting ready to go into his natural, because this Cyclone is only going to go to, like, it's now a problem that needs to be solved. Like, and you could solve it by going, you don't even have to look at your base. You could just be like, group 4, right click right in front of my command center on the mini map. Forget about it. And now when your Cyclone pops out and your Marines pop out, they will defend your natural, which is likely going to be attacked, since there's no Cyclone here anymore. He's chose to go down, not come back to defend. But yes, generally speaking, if you have like a tank here and some Marines here, your Cyclone should absolutely be down here, because then a Liberator will be you'll be able to deal with like a Liberator that way, or like a Raven, or maybe a Banshee. But this game particularly, you saw something that's going to happen faster than that. So you need to deal with that first. And if you lose no SCVs here because you just go, hey, Cyclone, go there to deal with his Cyclone, then you kill all of his SCVs and you lose 0, and you're so far ahead then. And also then it would have allowed your Reapers to not die to the SCV pull, and you could have done even more damage there, because you wouldn't have had to have multitasked like 2 screens at the same time right when that happened, because your dudes are sitting here instead. Yeah, that all your Reapers dying like that, that's a huge missed opportunity right there. 3 Reapers can kill an SCV pretty fucking fast. 3 Reapers can kill an SCV in 2 hits, because 3 Reapers do 24 damage and SCV only has 45 health. So if you're doing 24 times 2, that's 48, right? So you could be 2-shotting SCVs every like second almost. And you probably could have killed an extra like 6 SCVs here before your Reapers actually died, which would have been massively damaging to him. And then also, if you lost none yourself, the game could be a situation where it's like, right now your opponent only has like 21 SCVs, or like once your Reapers are done, or maybe like 23 if he builds more as they die, and you would have like 35, because you still would have lost your SCV scout either way, and you would just be in this massively advantaged position that's like almost unlosable already. But because that's a huge difference in economy, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually caught it this time, which is really good. The only thing that kind of sucked there was
I messed up something, right?
yeah, just for future reference, what you can do is put like it takes like a quick second when you know your opponent has a Cyclone, just put a unit like a Marine a little bit ahead of your Cyclone. Also, the fact that you're sitting here is a little scary because if he goes this way, he could attack your SCVs again. So I'd say you definitely want to sit like in the middle, and your Cyclone could be where the green box is, and your Marine would be like in front of it, like there. Because if he commits into a lock-on and he goes for the Marine, the lock-on goes, it's stuck on the Marine now, and then as soon as the Marine dies, it goes on. Then it starts going on cooldown for 4 seconds, which gives you a ton of time to lock onto his Cyclone with your Cyclone, and you could just easily kill it.
I feel like my Cyclone got cancelled. The lockdown got cancelled.
You so you actually didn't even ever lock on. I think what you did here is you like right clicked it or something, or you I don't know, you move commanded it. Something happened where you did a command and you did not allow the Cyclone to lock onto his Cyclone because you're not actually locked onto him right now. Now you finally locked on and you died.
I think I A-clicked his Cyclone.
Yeah, like if you do that, it will not. Like if you A-click the ground, it'll lock on. But if you tell your Cyclone to lock onto the actual, like if you tell your Cyclone to A-click something, it's actually an ability or like a spell. So you're telling it to use its auto attack instead.
Okay.
SCV ready. Go.
Yeah, and I'd say at this point, this game is actually really close. Neither one of you is like really far ahead. So the game is kind of like, now it's in a point where you do need to know if your opponent's going for a third base or if they're going for an all-in. And one of the best ways to figure that out is if you're going to harass with like a Raven, you can totally do that. And if you don't want to harass with the Raven, you should probably fucking scan his base by like, I would say 6-minute scan is a good idea. Because that tells you if you need to be set up for a tank timing or not. Like something like that. Like if he doesn't have a third base, you definitely need to be defensive. And you can also tell if he does or does not have a third base by how much production he has. If he's got like 3 racks already, you need to be defensive. And the scan right now would be great because like if we pause it, we'll do like a 605. So right now, if your Reaper is dead and you scanned, you could be like, yep. Like automatically, if you scan like right here and you saw double racks, not a single racks, and you don't see a third command center. The fact that he has double racks alone already tells you your opponent has more production than you. So this guy is more likely going to do a timing to you than the opposite. So the first thing you should do, if you know you need to be defensive and you know there's a potential of your opponent doing a timing, is exactly where this is happening right now. You need to get your base fucking sorted with vision. So like if you already had a depot here earlier for the Reaper, absolutely make a depot down here now for a potential drop. And you need to get a depot like up here for a potential drop. And I would say leave like 1 tank in your natural and like 1 tank in your main. And that way you can rotate the one that's not being utilized to the base that is being utilized. So like if he drops your natural, unseat your main, go bring it down to the natural. That way you're never like fully out of position and your bio can rotate back and forth to wherever it needs to be.
SCV ready. SCV ready.
Like right here too, you definitely want to make sure you're stutter stepping forward. The worst thing in the world you can do right now is a move in a choke point where your Marines block each other and he has a medevac. That'll just heal through the little bits of damage that you're dealing. But if you stutter step, all your bio will hit and you'll have enough DPS to overpower the medevac's healing.
SCV ready.
And stutter stepping would literally just be grabbing your units and going, like, if he, we'll go back to where, like, right when it needed to happen.
SCV ready.
Like right here, right now. All you would do to stutter step is you would have your army selected, right? I don't give a shit what you're selecting. You can select the whole thing. And you can just right click like right here. And then A click right there. And then right click, A click, right click, A click. So the way stutter step would work, okay? The important thing to understand, this is really, really, really important to understand about stutter step, because if you don't do it this way, you will do it awful and it will be shit. When you A click, you need to, this is, hopefully, if this sounds confusing, I will try to explain it in a different way, but please tell me if this sounds confusing, because I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. Each unit in StarCraft 2 has an attack animation, and that attack animation has nothing to do with attack speed. It's like the way the unit sets up to fire its shot. And some units are faster than others. It's more of a feel than anything. This is not something that's recorded as stats anywhere. It's like something that you just understand yourself through experience. A Marine is fast though, and it's even faster let me just say it like this: when the attack speed's faster, generally speaking, the attack animation is going to be quickly. It's going to be quick, but it's not the exact same thing as the attack speed though. But a quick attack speed generally means a quick attack animation. So all you got to do is you got to attack your Marine on the ground, and then whatever the attack animation takes to go off, you then tell it immediately to right click and move command until 0.61 seconds goes off, and then attack the ground, wait for the attack animation to go off, and then immediately right click for 0.61 seconds, as close to that as you can. That is proper stutter step, because you want to be moving during the attack cooldown, and as soon as you tell your unit to attack, you only want to wait as long as the attack animation takes to go off. And if you wanted me to guess here, okay, this is a guess, but this is probably pretty close to accurate. A Marine's attack animation is probably only 0.15 of a second. It's really fucking fast. And then its attack speed is 0.61, but the attack speed doesn't start until it actually shoots its shot. So the attack animation and the attack speed are two separate things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you would want to definitely be stuttering your Marines in quicker, like a lot quicker than you did, and you could actually get rid of this and not lose nearly as many SCVs as you did here. Because you lost, I think, like 3 SCVs here before you actually got out.
So about stutter stepping, here is the priority to stutter step or to make units.
So you should be able to do both at the same time, because you would only need to be stutter stepping there for about a total of like 4 seconds.
Okay.
And you could definitely have windows of time where 4 seconds is just going to be part of the build time of all of your shit.
Okay.
I would say the best time to build units would be to check that and be like, are we good? Like, if we're getting a thumbs up here, would be right now. Hold on, pause it right when it happened. I was looking at the wrong fucking ramp. It's right here. Right now. Like, it's 6 minutes, basically. This would be the perfect time to start walking your Marines down to where they need to go. Ideally, again, you would have a depot here. Because, like, if we did the 6-minute scan, and you were like, oh, yep, if by now, if I haven't figured out what he's doing yet, I know he's not going for a 3rd CC. I'm going to be defensive now because I do have a 3rd CC, and my opponent is definitely aggressive. He just has more production than me. Oh, so that would be a great time to finish off the rest of the scouting in your base. And then if you spotted this, you would immediately go, how's my minerals? Production, SCVs, you good? Make SCVs right now and make sure my production's all great. If you just make SCVs right now, you're totally fine. Like 2 more, and then you're good, because it's the fastest thing that's going to finish. And then you tell your Marines to go down, and as soon as they're there, stutter step for a couple seconds, he loads in the medevac, starts flying away. You A-move to wherever he's going again. If like he's going to fly north to your natural, just tell your dudes to go to the natural, check your production again.
Okay.
SCV ready. SCV ready.
And I like that you left a tank per base. Like, you should definitely just leave it like that, especially if your opponent's going to be aggressive for now.
SCV ready.
And now that you have 3 tanks, you actually can leave 1 here constantly. You don't have to always... you only need to leapfrog one tank or the other when your opponent is attacking you, when you only have like 1 or 2 tanks. But as soon as you have 3, you could genuinely leave this here. And the only reason why you wouldn't leave it here is if your opponent is going to all in you, and this almost kind of does look all in here. Like, so if you really wanted to move that tank up now after seeing this like this, great scout with that Marine, by the way. But if you wanted to move it up now, you totally could, because this looks very fucking committed here.
Ready to plunder.
So, how often do you use 2 control groups with your army?
Like I have 5, but what I usually do is I have one big army group, which is 1,
Uh-huh.
and my harass is 3. For instance, when I do a marine drop, it's 3.
Okay.
And then I overlap units with my main. So for instance, if I have marine tank, I would have tanks on 2 just to focus shot, but I have all of them on 1 to move together.
Yep.
And ravens are on a different one.
All right. Is your Raven hockey genuinely 8?
Yeah, it's W.
It's W. Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's
So, this is what I would recommend you to do. Start putting your Raven and your Viking on the same control group, and then
okay.
never, ever, ever move your Marines in front of your tanks like this, ever. So what you would do instead, when he like the fact that he scanned you, and the fact that he doesn't have a 3rd CC, and the fact that he scanned you, is amazing for you, because this guy is only putting himself deeper and deeper and deeper into a position where if this fails, the game's over and you win and he loses, because his economy is suffering more and more and more. And the fact that you also saw a medevac there and no support for that is amazing as well, because you have Viking and you have air control. So all you need to do right now is tell your there's 2 things about tank lines that like need to be respected. The first thing is make sure your tank line not only covers each other relatively well, but they cover your base for what needs to be defended well. Like for instance, if you put tanks like 1 tank right there above the gas and 1 tank below the gas, and then the other guy sieged like right here above these like boxes, and he's out of range of your tanks, but he is in range to kill your command center, that's terrible tank positioning for you then. So as long as your tanks being sieged covers all of your buildings, then your tank positioning is totally fine. The only way this guy could actually should be able to attack a building right now at your natural would be if he sieged a tank at the fucking low ground right there and shot it over the top with like a weird spot. That's whatever. But you get what I mean though? Like as long as the tanks are covering your base, that's correct. And covering each other. That's the first thing. The second thing tank lines need to respect is you don't ever walk into it. You want your opponent to walk into it. So the best thing you can do would be, I would immediately be like, okay, tell your Marines to back up and have like half of them go there below one of your tanks, and like tell them like hold position, or maybe move them back slightly further, like right there, so they don't walk forward if one of your tanks gets shot with like an A move command, because it's like, oh, let's go help, like automated. You don't want that. Make sure some of them are nearby, but you want them nearby. That's important as well. So half your bio goes down and half your bio like goes to the right. So they're nearby, but they don't actually sit in front of your tanks. Because when you want to use them is when your opponent decides to YOLO and he stim packs forward and runs at you. That exact moment, you move your Marines forward. And if he turns around, you immediately turn around as well. And if he runs into your tank line and you don't run into his, you're winning the fight. Because it's not about Marines in this fight that actually win the fight. It's about the tanks. And all you want to do with your Marines is make them last to buy your tanks time to take shots. That's all that matters. So if you walk your Marines in front of the tank line like this, all that's going to happen is you're risking it so hard that you're going to walk into his tank line and lose all of it. Now he's actually going for your main, which is not a big deal. Do not unsiege these tanks. That's the biggest thing you would need to respect here. The fact that you scanned, I think that's a waste. You definitely don't need to scan here because you have air control. So you should have checked here instead with your Raven Viking instead of scanning, and then your Marines should have just kind of chilled back to see if he's going to commit to this or not.
Mhm.
And then as soon as he commits to this instead, the best thing you could do then, the most like amazing thing you could do then would be to leave, like either leave one Raven or maybe leave both Ravens in front of your tanks, like here. and then that way he can't just push you. Like, the last thing you want to do is lose all vision here, and then let him re-push this with tanks and siege your tanks with his with superior vision, while you have all your air going back to kill a medevac, which doesn't need to happen. You have a tank already here right now, which will be more than enough to deal with the bio, especially if you sent maybe a couple of Marines back to help, or some of the rallied Marines that come out of the racks could help. They're almost done anyways. And then your Vikings can come back and knock out the medevac, which will kill it in like 2 shots. So, vision, the thing to understand is vision is super important. And you don't want to lose it, but you don't want to also gain it by scanning. If you have air control with Viking, utilize that. You have air control with Vikings and Ravens. You definitely don't want to be scanning. It's such a waste of your money. So you get rid of the bio. I would say that was maybe a little overkill on the turrets. It's fine, but you dealt with it. It's fine. It's not. You didn't lose the Raven, thank God. It's not the biggest deal. If you lost that Raven, I would be like, okay, that definitely sucks for you. But you dealt with it, and it's okay. And you're not still open to getting attacked here. Okay, you got rid of the Viking, and just making sure you're continuing to pump SCVs, and your position will be fine. At this point too, upgrades definitely should be. The fact that you have engineering base is great. Definitely should start upgrades. Keep your units rolling the whole time with biotank. And my honest recommendation for TvT is 2 medevacs in TvT specifically, just 2 medevacs, and then pure Viking. Mass medevacs is fucking terrible. The only way that's good is if you are always dropping. Nice scout on the 3rd. If you had another Marine scouting the other 3rd, that'd be super good too. But yeah, I love your scout. And you also just saw for a glimpse of it for a second there that he's moving out. That's just this sensor tower. I would recommend it to be a little bit tucked back. Like, it's just gonna make it harder to defend it because you're putting it in a position where he can siege it from like the cliff here, and just kill it, which you'll never be able to defend. So I would recommend putting your sensor tower like maybe like right there, like tucked behind like the edge of your mineral line, because it'll still show you a ton of vision around your base, like plenty of vision. Oh, and it's gonna be it's not gonna be something that you need to go forward to try and defend, and it's gonna be exposed and stuff.
Birthdays are almost here.
Yo, F and Dad, thank you guys for the sub. Much love. And Gino, thank you for the sub as well. Happy birthday, almost. Thank you, thank you. Okay, right now, do not engage this. If you engage this, you will take a bad fight. Like, chances are high that you could actually, let me say it like this. You could actually win this fight if you take this fight. Simply because you have Ravens. But it's a fight that is risky if you don't use the Ravens perfectly. And you don't need to take this fight. All you need to do right now is siege your tanks and back the fuck up. And the beautiful thing about sieging your tanks and backing up with your Marines is if you and him are within range of each other, like if you're sieging and he's sieging and your tanks are going to shoot at each other, use your Ravens to disable his tanks. And then you just get free tank kills. And if you do it a couple times, you'll get to a point where you have a larger army than him that you can just run him over with later on. But right now, you guys both have an army that is like relatively large compared to each other. Like, neither one of you can genuinely run each other over just by A-moving. Like, super easy. So this is kind of risky. And Raven control here is pretty important to be like effective. And I think that was your scan again. Definitely don't need to scan again. I think you're a little scan happy. All you need to do seriously is just know where, like, let me say it like this too. This is really important. At this point in the game, you should feel like you are ahead. So you should never feel the need to scan your opponent. And I'll explain why you're ahead, by the way. We'll come back to that in a second. But you should feel like you are ahead as long as your macro is not awful. As long as you're not like macroing like shit. Logically, you should be ahead. And every time your opponent is in the area, you should not feel intimidated to the points where you have to scan to make sure like you can beat that. So like all you need to do instead is make sure you're just in the right location and you're fine. Like make sure like wherever he is, you're zoning it. And now that you have a sensor tower, the process of doing that is going to be super easy. The only thing you could do to make your defense like rock solid, I would say, would be maybe make like 2 turrets over here on top of your natural and make like 2 turrets on the bottom of your main, because your sensor tower can't fucking see that. So like you have no idea if he's going to drop you. And this guy also has medevac, so he's prone to medevac. But now the reason why you're ahead is because 2 reasons. Number 1, you went for a third base faster than he did. And number 2, you killed more of his economy than he killed of yours in the earlier exchange. So you should definitely be ahead.
But I wouldn't know that if I was in game.
No, you would. Because when you killed like 10 SCVs here at the natural. We're talking about your Reaper Hellion. And then his Cyclone did not kill 10 SCVs at your natural.
Okay.
And then the other thing was, you actually saw double racks. I don't know. I think your Reaper saw it earlier, like when you jumped into his main, and you died to SCVs like right here. You saw double racks, and that was before you even had a double racks yourself. So you had like, that's when you were starting a command center. So you have the economy edge over your opponent, and every second that goes by, you're only getting further ahead when you did not take damage to the point to where like you're getting fucking killed. Like he showed up here with his attack. Remember how I said that timing attack needed to do like damage here, and it didn't do anything. All he did was he showed up and he ran away. And then he dropped your main base with a medevac, and it died. And you didn't even lose it. You almost lost a Raven, but you lost nothing. Like, that's definitely meaning you're ahead now. Because he was more military invested, you were more economically invested, and he did not do any damage. And now the game goes on. So you have a lead now, because you can now outproduce his military with your... Like, you can keep up with him, essentially. And you eventually will outproduce him, because your third base looks like this, and his third base looks like that. Like, he is not on par with you economically. Like, you're keeping up a little bit of a lead here. It's not like I'm not trying to say the game's over, you automatically win the game. All I'm trying to say is you have a lead that you shouldn't feel intimidated about. Like, he's the one who needs to feel like, oh shit, pressure's on. I'm a little bit behind now. Not dead, but now I'm behind, so I gotta figure some shit out here. Like, I gotta find a way to attack and do some damage to get me back in a lead in an advantageous position, or I just need to play conservatively and not throw the game because I'm a little behind.
So does that mean I should play defensively?
You can play however you want. Yeah, I would say, like, if you wanted to lean on the aggression with this, you could. It would only but here's the thing. It would only make sense to lean on aggression if you felt confident that you could control the map with it, and you also confirmed he had a third base, which you have not done yet. You have not actually seen the third yet. So, for all you know, there could be fucking 3 more racks over here, and he might go all in. And if you're leaning on aggression when he's actually 2 base all-inning you, that could get you killed. So it would only make sense to lean on aggression in your position right now if you knew he was taking a third.
Okay.
And then if you don't lean on aggression and he does have a third, it doesn't matter. You're still in a good spot. The only way you would actually start falling behind would be if this guy took a risk and he double expanded and actually had 4 bases right now. It was like, oh, fuck. Okay, well, I got to take a risk to get back in the game now, because that was not a good early game for me. And then he's got 4 bases and you're sitting back defending on 3. Then if you give him time, then you're going to fall behind. But right now in the current game, you guys are both on 3 bases. You have a little bit of a lead. Time is only on your side. It doesn't mean it does not mean you automatically win the game, but it does mean the lead grows little by little in your favor as long as you don't macro poorly. You sieging right now where you are here, I don't know how much I like this, only because you only saw 1 unit there with a sensor tower, And if and this guy knows where your sensor tower is, by the way, like he can see it on the map. And if this guy was really smart, he could hypothetically leave a Marine there on purpose, or maybe like 2 Marines there on purpose on the edge of it to make you think he's standing there, and then run the rest of his army around to your natural, and then zone you out right here from getting back to your natural. So that he could put like tanks and shit and Marines around it, and have like only like 8 Marines run into your mineral line. It was stim pack. Like that, you could fuck yourself by doing something like that. So sieging in the middle, like too far away from your base like this, could screw you. And the same thing could happen here. Like same thing on the left side. If he runs around this way, and let's say this one's a little bit more easier because you have a little bit more vision here though. But if you somehow allowed him to siege like here on your command center before you got back there, you'd be compromised again. So you want to just make sure you're always preventing him from killing what's important, not protecting the middle of the map. This doesn't matter right now.
Better be good. Ready to roll out.
Because the whole thing about tank lines is whoever gets the location first claims it, and it now becomes 10 times harder to break it than it was if you were the one who was there first, and you could just prevent him from coming to you. Tank lines are fucking rough. I really do like how you're trying to move Marines around though. You should do this more, and you should make a few more of them. But the fact that you have Marines kind of like scattering around every now and again, that's really good. I do really like that. Because that's high level TvT right there. That's the only way you'll actually be able to play the game properly. Like TvT is the biggest chess match out of all of the matchups. Because you literally, TvT, the best way to describe it, is it's a matchup of preventing your opponent from having a win condition. That's all it is. It's like, oh fuck, he got tanks set up before I got back there. That's checkmate. I'm dead now. No other, like, lurkers are a little bit like that in ZVZ, but not even nearly as much. Tank in TvT is so much like that. So in the tank phase of the game, you want to just prevent yourself from getting checkmated. And if you're really good at asserting yourself on the map, you can then checkmate your opponent if you can find an opening to just take advantage of.
So at this phase of the game, I'm kind of confused. I'm not sure what the plan should be.
The plan should be literally just to never let yourself get caught in a bad tank positioning. So all you need to do right now is spread your Marines out like you are. That's great. You can even honestly do what this guy's doing. Make a couple sensor towers. Sensor towers are genuinely not that expensive. They're kind of cheap. Just make a couple of sensor towers and spread them around your base. It'll make it easier for you to not take damage from shit. Spread out some Marines as well. Find out where your opponent is. And this would be now like how you know how earlier I was like you can scan at 6 minutes. This would be a great time to scan again. If you were like, okay, I want to set up an attack and I see a sensor tower right here, so I can only assume there's a third base right there. So if you scan, like let's say you start getting ready to move out and you scan right here to look and see where his army is. That's great. You know what you could do right now? You could actually do something similar to what he's doing here, where you could send a squad out. You could send like 14 Marines, okay? Like something like that. Like a decently sized group of Marines. Because you're going to be making more anyways the entire time. So it doesn't fucking matter. Send like 14 Marines to the left. Tell your entire army to go to the right. He's also scouting, so you need to get rid of those. So if you do it too early, you know, this is why scouting is important. He'll see it. So if you can get rid of his scouts, you send a group of like something that's going to be annoying and distracting to somewhere else on the map. You can be like, okay, you come over. I want you to come over here and defend my 14 Marine attack. Which, if you don't respect it, will kill your entire mineral line and your command center. Because 14 Marines can do a lot of fucking damage with Stimpack. They don't even need a medevac to do the damage, as if nothing's really there defending it. And if this Terran player doesn't respect it enough, the whole situation, and he moves everything back, if you get your main army moves in as soon as he, like, let's say he comes here, okay? And you're like, okay, he's attacking my 14 Marines. Let's run further back into his natural and drag him as far back as I can to waste as much time as possible. And at the exact same time, I'm going to walk into his sensor tower and set up my tanks right there on his base. And I'm going to have all my bio behind my tanks and my Ravens and Vikings right in front of my tanks. As soon as he comes back to try to defend that, You can throw auto turrets down. You can stim pack forward, like right into your tank line as he stim packs to your tank line. So your bio gets right in front of your tanks right at the last second while your tanks are drilling him like crazy. And even if you don't ultimately win the fight, because let's say he doesn't fully commit to that fight, if you make him lift off his command center because you compromise this position, you're winning the game. All TvT is trying to think of ways to set up your tanks in a checkmate style position. That's all it is in this phase of the game. And if you're not doing that, instead all you're doing is spreading out Marines to prevent that from happening to you and consistently trying to increase your macro. You're like, okay, get my upgrades going to 2-2, get my next command center going, increase my tank production, increase my bio production, so I can constantly max faster in the future. And ultimately, you'd probably want to go to a total of like 1 starport. 2 starports, honestly, is fine. Like late. But we'll just say 2 starports, 2 factories, and like 12 barracks. If you have that, you're most likely fine in all TvTs. Like that's going to be probably enough to remax quickly and have a good amount of production constantly flowing out of your base. And you can always increase it. Sorry, go ahead.
So, for instance, if I was at his 3rd base and I siege up the tank line and his 3rd flew away,
Yep.
So after the fight, I have some leftover units. I have a few Marines and maybe 2 or 3 tanks siege there. Should I pull away, or I just leave the units there and let them die? Because eventually they're gonna get cleaned up.
So that's something that comes from seeing what he does with his army, and if your opponent wants to take a fight with you, you should absolutely leave it sieged up, because if you unsiege it and he just runs you down with Stimpack, everything's gonna fucking die, and you're gonna get you're going to get a terrible trade. But and again, that's why your Ravens and your Vikings are going to be in front of your tanks to kind of be spotting in the radius of your tank fire, like the range of it. So you're gonna see if he's gonna do this shortly after the base is compromised, if that happens. And if the Terran player just backs up and the sensor tower is dead now, you're more than welcome to unsiege then if he's not in the vicinity, and you can leave. And then if he disappears, that is another moment, again, I would highly recommend to scan where he should be. So if you siege here, and he lifts this off, and you saw him here, like just like this, just now, and then he goes, oh, you know what? I'm not going to fight that. I'm going to lift off. I'm going to take this 3rd instead. I'm going to back up. As soon as he backs up and you kill sensor tower, and now you're like, 3 seconds go by or 4 seconds go by and you're in the fucking dark and you're scratching your head, you're like, what are you doing? 100% scan and go, are you just running around to the bottom of my base now and you're going to attack me the same way? And if he does that, again, you have an option now to go, okay, do I want to counterattack with this? Do I want to like unsiege, load up into some medevacs and go into your main? Or do I want to just turn around, go home and go back to my main army and regroup with my reinforcements? Meanwhile, your reinforcements, if he looks like he's going to run around the other side of the map, use your reinforcements to set up a tank line defensively on where he'll go. And then reinforce it once you get back. The option can always be to make one big army always meet up and do a power push, or you can multi-prong it. And multi-pronging it is 100% harder. It's definitely not the easier way to go about it. But sometimes it is better based on if your opponent never multi-prongs as well. Like if this guy, if all he ever does is he just groups up one army, attacks, groups up one army, attacks, groups up one army, attacks, you will fucking destroy this guy if you always make him run into a siege tank line that's already sieged, because everywhere he goes, you're watching where he is going to go and you're setting up tanks before he gets there. And the way you can do that when you're in the phase of the game where it's push time, scouts are great. To be honest, all game is scouts are great. Like always have like a Marine over here. Have a Marine in the middle of the map. Have a Marine on the right side of the map. Like have at least 3 Marines kind of just like spotting for the edges of the map. And then like we talked about earlier, if you want to have some extra sensor towers, that's totally fine. Put a sensor tower right there. Get a planetary with it. Put a sensor tower over like right here and get a planetary with it. That's totally fine. Because it's just going to make it easier for you not to have more Marine scouts all over the place. Because you'll see him on the mini-map with like red dots all over the place. And if you really wanted to do it, if you're doing a really good job of zoning him with tank sieges, put a sensor tower in the middle of the map then. And you could then see where he goes defensively. And you could then without having to scan him where he is, you could just set up tanks where he goes, like where he's not at, and compromise bases. Because the great thing about Ravens is it makes it really easy to break small defenses. Like if he's got 4 tanks sieged up, and you have like 4 tanks and some bio, just like like this army right here. If this wants to break an army, that's like half the bio size and 4 tanks that are already sieged. You could just stim pack in there with some auto turrets in front of your army as you engage, or with some interference matrices, and just wipe out his little defense. Siege up yourself, and now he has to break into you there. And if he doesn't do it with Ravens, it's going to be a fucking mess. Like, even though you might lose the fight, you would absolutely kill more supply than what you lose in that trade. Like, if your supply is worth like 35, you would probably kill like 50 while you lose 35. And it's still a win for you overall, as long as you're continuously building new units all the time.
Okay.
But it 100% is heavily on just not allowing your opponent to get a win condition with positioning. Terran versus Terran, like I said before, this army is either like, if we're talking about like, let's say like a power scale out of like 5. 5 out of 5 is like it's sieged up and it's all spread properly. And then this army could be like a 2 out of 5 in terms of power if it's unsieged and it's caught like this. Like if you push into that, that's awful. This sucks ass. This is nowhere near as strong as if it's sieged up and then he stims in front of his tanks with his Marines right at the last second. Like that's so much more powerful than this kind of shit. So you just want to make sure you never get caught like that. And it's definitely worth it to make multiple factories. I would seriously say 2 factories. You should always make a second factory as soon as you're on 5 racks. Always. And then as soon as you get to like double digit racks, like 10 plus, 10, 11, 12, if you actually are doing a good job with tanks, literally make a 3rd factory. And have 3 factory production able to pump out tanks quick as fuck. So you can always have tank contains. Because again, the game is literally not that much about Marines. It's so much more about your tanks. And I feel like this, understanding that and getting good at that, is going to make you steamroll Terrans all day. Because Terrans who only rely on their Marines, the only way Terrans like that actually win is when the tank player is sloppy. Now, obviously, you should still make Marines. I'm not telling you not to make Marines. But you actually will get to a point where your supply will get lower in Marines and higher in tanks. And you'll have like 21 tanks. And you'll just be like controlling the map, pushing him back. That kind of shit. Like if you're doing a really good job.
Biggest problem is I have everything in one control group.
I agree.
I see a lot of times that my Marines and Ravens, they walk together in front of the tank.
That's why we talked about that earlier. That's something you should definitely practice. Like,
Okay.
try really hard to never let that happen. Like right here, you see him stimming with 1 Marine. It's kind of hard to go, oh, 1 Marine, that means his whole army's coming. And it's 1 stim back Marine for like half a second that I've seen it so far. But like right now, I would say the second you saw that, you should be 100% reacting to this by now. And the best reaction I would say for you to do right now would be fucking right click right here. Like back up just a smidge. Back the fuck up just really quickly. Because you need to get your fucking units out of there. The air units especially need to get out of there. You don't have your tanks sieged yet. And your tanks are also kind of blocking your bio a little bit in the ramp. So if you back up, just until the point to when this tank gets to like where that tank is. Where like the ramp is mostly open again. Siege your tanks then. And leave your bio right about like right here. And your air can support like right above it. If this guy does not back up and he pushes into it, you could drop auto turrets on the high ground right here, and you could then stim pack your bio back into him again to cover your tanks. But if you siege right now and just stim pack in and all your air sits on top of this and it just dies before your siege is up, you're going to lose everything. And the fact that you committed to the top of the ramp is scary. Because you moved in deeper. And the reason why that's scary is because either way, you were going to move to set the army up a little bit better because we both agreed. Like you did it. You did what I said, but in reverse. We both thought that positioning sucked ass for you because your tanks were going to block the ramp. So your Marines were going to get locked out of being able to help there. But you moved into him rather than away from him. And it's always fucking scary to move into bio when there's a lot of it, when it's going to be able to stim you down before your tanks can take shots. That's when that's when Marine players will actually punish you. So you want to make sure whenever Marines are going to stim back into you, you're watching before, like you have a scout ahead of it or something like that. You're making it to where every time a Terran tries to do this, as he stims into you, he's getting pummeled by tank fire. You don't ever want to start sieging your tanks as he's just drilling you with a machine gun. Because you got like one volley off there, and you lost a lot of shit as well before that even happened. And then you're running into his tank. This is the biggest thing, the biggest mistake you can make. Do not ever chase into a tank line, ever. At this point, the best thing you can do, seriously, back the fuck up, guard your tanks. Leave your Vikings and Ravens in front. Like, I know you're saying, it's just a second ago, you're like, my Marines and Ravens always go in front. Never let the Marines go in front. Try your best to never let this happen. And if this guy wants to camp the area, you have two ways to go about this. First thing you can do, pick him apart with your Vikings. You have air control. He has no Vikings. You could literally kill his medevacs, kill his air vision with your Viking. And then as soon as you do that, you can start slowly leapfrogging your tanks to kill his tanks. And if he ever scans, disable his tank that's in range. So like you can because the tank can actually shoot further than it can see. So the only way he'll be able to see you if his medevacs are dead is if he scans. And if you siege a tank at the edge of his tank, like this tank right here, if you siege at the edge of its range, which means you're going to have the same range as he does, if he doesn't scan, the tank will just die because you can shoot further than you can see, but you have vision through Viking Raven, and he doesn't, so he just won't see you. But if he does scan, you could just disable it, and then it just dies anyways. And if you don't want to play that way, if you don't want to play the slow, methodical, fucking like micro push of leapfrog, just back up your Marines and fucking hold the position here. Because if you guys have a stalemate in this location, that's totally fine. And what you can do instead behind this is grab another army. Ideally, it will have tanks in it, and you could go around somewhere else. And if you stalemate here, whoever pulls the trigger first and runs in Marines like this first will lose. And then if you have another attack going somewhere else, this doesn't matter at that point in time, because the guy who's going to win the fight more likely is going to be the guy who's going to be patient and wait for the other guy to run into tanks. And then at the last second again, you defend your tanks when he tries to attack them with his Marines. And then if he pulls back, you don't chase. You go back to holding your tanks again. Just defending your tanks. Don't ever chase into tanks. It's the one way you'll lose all your games. And if you have another army going somewhere else, which is maybe on like a different hotkey, like this could be control 3, okay? Like your drop hotkey. This goes the opposite side of the map, goes over here, and you can punish like another expansion. And if it doesn't exist, set up on his natural. Go into his production line. And you're going to make such a fucking problem for this guy if you do that. It's not... TvT is seriously not about breaking the army every single time you fight it. The only way it is if you do it the way I just said, where you take air control and your tanks slow push. But if you don't do that, just be willing to just say, okay, stalemate. These armies are stalemating. Let's counter with another army. And that's why at this position in the game too, you should absolutely make some fucking turrets. Because if he has the same idea and he starts dropping you, those turrets are going to come in handy really well at helping you deal with harass. Yeah, the fact that like you disabling tanks there right now, you did that for the purpose of your Marines to engage. And it doesn't make any sense because it doesn't, like, I think you're looking at it too much in the Marine side of things. And Marines, all they are, seriously, is fodder. At this point in TvT, a Marine's name should just be fodder. It's fucking tank fire. It's like a meat shield for your siege tanks that absorb his siege tank shots. It's a fucking meat grinder unit. It has nothing. The DPS of a Marine is fucking irrelevant. It only matters if the tank player messes up with his tanks. And then you can capitalize on that. But otherwise, it's all about the tanks. So always play for the tanks, never play for the Marines. Marines, all they do is guard your tanks. And when I say Marines only matter when your opponent messes up, what I mean by that is like if your opponent loses all of his Marines because he runs into tanks, and then let's say your opponent only has like 6 tanks and like 6 Marines now, and you have 6 tanks and 36 Marines, you could absolutely make a concave that's like large and stim pack forward and just move down his tanks because he has nothing to cover the tanks anymore. That's when Marines matter, is because your opponent already made a mistake and he lost all of his Marines. But if that didn't happen, don't ever just fucking YOLO your Marines forward. Always play the game of patience and TvT, where you siege first and guard it. Because if you don't do that, you will take so many losses in TvT.
Okay.
Like you see, unsieging right here, this was a scary unsiege for you. You just lost all your Marines, and now you unsiege because you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to die. I'm going to lose this fight. But the beautiful thing about Ravens is that, like, you only have 1 left, which is unfortunate, but you would have actually been better off just leaving this sieged. And if as soon as he tries to engage, drop auto turrets down for whatever you have, and guard your tanks with your Marines again. Because if he walks into your tank line like that, you will fucking destroy his army so hard. Like, it's insane how much power tanks have when they're sieged. They just delete shit before it engages. And you could have also killed all of his medevacs with your Vikings here. But now what's going to happen is... So, like, even if you would... The point I'm trying to make here again is... It was uncomfortable because you lost your Marines in a bad way. But even though that happened, if you stayed sieged and he moved in like this, you would have killed more supply than you would have lost. And it would have still been... That specific exchange would have still been not bad for you overall. The only time it becomes really bad when that kind of shit happens is if you lose like all your tanks and all you're getting out of it is killing Marines, and then his tank count grows and grows and grows and grows. Which that does obviously, that whoever has more tanks is in the advantage in TvT. That does suck to have a less tank count. But all that's going to happen now after you lost all your Marines and now you unsiege is I guarantee you're going to lose at least 1 tank, maybe 2 tanks running away, and then he's just going to get free kills because you're not going to fight back. Because if you do, you're going to die. So you lost 1 tank, and now he's chasing you down, and he gets a 2nd tank for free. And he might even get a 3rd tank for free. And he gets 4. He's going to get 4 tanks for free. He just killed 4 tanks for no cost. And if you just left them sieged, you would have lost 4 tanks anyways, but a massive chunk of this army would have died. So that's why you want to be really careful about when you choose to unsiege.
Okay.
And if you left him sieged and he takes, let's just hypothetically say, you leave him sieged, you still had some bio to cover that, and you had a Raven. You drop an auto turret, you cover your tanks with your Marines perfectly. He backs off because he's taking a bunch of fucking losses to your tanks, just like you did. And then you back off as well. And it becomes a stalemate once again. If you do that, and then at the same time, this new army that's back here, that you've now regrouped with, if this was going around the map to the other side of the map to attack him in a different location, suddenly that Terran would be in the middle of the map having a stalemate with you after losing a bunch of units as well. And now he's losing his fucking natural and a bunch of SCVs. So TvT is literally all about patience, and it's all about making sure every time the engagement happens, you are already sieged. That's the hardest part about the game, is always making sure your scouting is good enough to always be sieged before you're getting attacked and in the right spot. And whoever does that better will honestly win every time. So like that fight went well for you because he engaged into a tank, even though it was only 1 tank. He engaged into 1 tank that was sieged and a bunch of bio with unsieged tanks and his bio. So he ran into siege fire, and it would have been even more ridiculous if you had more tanks here, like 3 tanks or 4 tanks here. It would have been even more insane. But you destroyed him in that fight because he was not sieged and he ran into tanks with Marine versus Marine. And again, the guy who runs into tank fire is always going to lose that. But now if you push out into this with your Marines, this is a mistake. The best thing you can do right now would be, honestly, to maybe land your Vikings on sieged up tanks. If you had a medevac, you do actually. This is even better. Load up your medevacs and drop on the tanks. That would be a great way to get rid of them cost efficiently. Or you could slow push them with your tanks and your air control. But to be fair, you don't really want to slow push if a bunch of tanks are here and there's no Marines to guard it, you want to probably go quickly to get rid of them, because getting rid of tanks is always better. If you can trade Marines for pure tanks, that's always a good trade for the Marines. And if there's no Marines of his to cover that, again, the best way to do that would be load up your medevacs and drop on them, because now he doesn't have Marines to kill air units. Definitely don't just run at them. And if he unsieges like that though, definitely run at him. So it's like, it's judgment calls, where it's like, if you did load up your medevacs quickly and he stayed sieged, you could drop on it. But if you watch him unsiege like that, Marines with stim run way faster than tanks, especially if they're getting stuck in an unsiege animation for 3 seconds. You could have easily run down at least 2 tanks here. So that was a bit of a missed opportunity for you.
Why is his income so much better than mine? Oh, he wasn't. Like, he was like...
There could be he might have dropped like a mule wave. So there's some times where like people forget to drop mules and suddenly they drop 9 at once and they're like, oh fuck, mules, and then their income goes up 3,000 more than what it is. Okay. But then when mules are gone, then it goes back to what it should be. I like your drop. This is a great drop, but it's at a bad time. If this drop was combined with your siege line, this drop would have done so much more damage. But now it's going to probably get... He'll probably pull SCVs and it will just get denied. And you'll have to either fly away or it'll die. Because there's nothing distracting him. And like right now too, there's another way to look at it too. If you wanted to do an attack right now, that would also be amazing if you did it with the drop setting it up. So your drop could actually distract him, get him out of position, and now you could actually move your tanks and your bio in position to kill his 4th or his 3rd. Like that would be, and obviously you don't even know he has a 4th yet. That's fine. But if you went to his 3rd base, you could actually have your army like coming up to approach like the sensor tower, like the edge of his sensor tower. And if you drop like, let's say his main base, which is the furthest thing away from the 3rd, the main base is not really your target. The 3rd base is your target. But if you get to the edge of his sensor tower and scan his 3rd, like right here, just to make sure you're not going to run into a siege line, if he's not there and he's instead coming back to defend the drop, fucking set up your tanks right there and compromise the ramp so he can't defend his 3rd. That's how you need to play TvT. That's the kind of shit you need to be doing in TvT to really get advantages. It's all about how do I set up a tank line in an effective way. And obviously he didn't back up at all. He didn't budge, which means that's correct by him to not do that. But now, look at him now. This is fucking terrible. Okay, he's going back. I was about to say, if he goes like up here, it's really bad. But there is always a way you can take advantage of somebody. So this guy didn't budge, right? He didn't budge on the 2 drop and the what's it called? Moving his army to the left. But here's a cool thing, a cool idea. This is how you need to start thinking about the game to really like become fucking solid in TvT. What if you did 2 medevacs with 12 or like 13 Marines and a tank, or 12 Marines and a tank? It's actually 12 Marines and a tank. That's enough. Because 4 Marines and a tank is full medevac load. So you have 1 tank, 4 Marines and 1 medevac, and 8 Marines and another medevac, okay? And let's say you siege your tank, you see this base, and you siege 1 tank right here, just 1 tank. And you have 12 Marines and 2 medevacs guarding it. If your opponent sees a tank, it looks more real. And if your opponent then goes, oh shit, that's a real attack, I'm going to move my entire army up here and get ready to guard that, because I'm getting shelled by tank right now on my base. If you took a good chunk of your army, it doesn't even, you could even have half your army here and half your army over here, which could be like 50 supply and 50 supply or something like that. If you just make him leave his natural and you run up to the ramp and you siege right here. So he has to run up a ramp into your tanks to stop it. And you don't even use all of your bio to go kill his base, but you use a chunk of it. Like, let's say you have 20 Marines in total here, and you use 10 of those 20 Marines to go knock out the command center and the depots and the SCVs and the factory, and it'll kill it over time. That's totally fine. And then as soon as he comes back here to try and defend his base, you will get an advantageous defense on his base. It's weird to think about it like that, but you're literally treating his base like you're defending it when you're killing it. Like you're setting up defensive postures on terrain to kill his army cost efficiently. Like it's not smart to like run all your tanks into his base, and then as soon as he gets back, then you siege, and then he kills a bunch of your tanks, and then the fight's over, and then he doesn't really lose a lot. But if you defend his natural against himself, and it compromises his whole fucking base, you can actually do so much fucking damage indirectly with just a little bit of units, because when he actually takes the fight for real, you take a massive good location defense on his terrain. And then if he comes back and defends that, if this army is still over here, you now push this base. So again, it's always thinking, how do I drag him around and set up my tanks aggressively in a way that's going to be cost efficient? That's how you attack somebody in TvT. And if you're defending in TvT, it's about how do I make sure I'm not going to get caught in a position that's going to get me fucked the same exact way I'm trying to do it to him. Like, I got to make sure I have my base covered properly. And again, the easiest way to do that once you're rich is to do exactly what you just did and just make some sensor towers. So when you attack him, maybe assassinate those sensor towers so that he loses that vision, and it makes it easier to set up attacks again.
Okay.
But overall, how do you feel about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that I had was I'm actually still using one control group, although I do have special units like assigned, but they're mixed. So I see it like very clear that my Marines like die a lot when I was actually trying to gain some vision with my air unit.
Yeah.
They just and then they just kind of die.
So,
And,
oh, go ahead. Keep going.
about the stalemate thing, I think I was just more focused on my side, where I was like, yeah, I cannot move, but it's the same for the opponent, where he could move as well.
Yeah.
I feel like my factory count is low at this point.
It definitely is. Yep.
Yeah, my tanks are way less. Than
You definitely need 3 factories by now, honestly. 2 factories on 5 barracks and 3 factories on double-digit barracks count, for sure. Go ahead.
The other question that I had is, like, at this phase of the game, usually opponents would have planetary fortresses on their 4th and 5th base.
Yep.
And if I just do 2 medevacs of Marines, I feel like it's not going to do anything.
So what you can do as well is you can put them behind the mineral line, and you can kill us. You don't have to kill the PF. You can kill SCVs.
The PF is not going to hit
Nope.
that far?
If you have Marines standing right here, you can kill dudes off the far patches. And if you have a Marine standing like right there, you can kill dudes off these patches. You can always every map works like this. You can always stand at the edge of the map behind where the mineral line is, and you can always kill the mineral line before the planetary can shoot you back. The only way you'll get shot by the planetary is if you drop like all 12 right there in a big blob, and then your dudes are like touching the mineral line. Then you will get shot by the PF.
Okay. The other thing is, like, for those PFs, sometimes I do another squad, like maybe 2-3 tanks, and then a few Marines to go in. But when my tanks are hitting the PF, all he needs to do is just pair the PF with workers, and then I'm kind of like feeling it's not worth my investment there.
Well, if you so think about it like this. It's not about there is a gain there to be had, but it's not really about trying to kill the PF with that tank, and it's like that's what the game is really going to be set on. It's about making your opponent move their army in a way that you can then fuck them over with harder. It's like chess is a good example, where it's like, I'm going to move my pawn here so that you move your knight to come kill my pawn, and then I'm going to snipe your knight with the bishop. And then I get a way better trade there because I made you move somewhere where you shouldn't have gone. That's what it really is about in TvT. You make them move somewhere where they're not supposed to be. Like the whole thing I was talking about, where I was like, if you had half your army over here and half your army over there, even though you make it look like you want to hit the PF, what you really want to hit is the natural with a really nice position. But you don't do that first, because then he'll just defend it. You make him move out of position to then do it. That's the real way to like set it up. But if we talk about efficiency for just that one tank, if you actually make your opponent not only repair but also not mine minerals, that's still a win for you. They're getting double negatives there because they're spending money to not make money with the workers' time. So it's not the worst anyways.
Okay.
This fight here for you, honestly, it looks terrible. Like it looks like you're gonna lose this fight, but it's actually a really good fight because he moved all of his Marines to the south, and you're about to trade Marines for tanks. And if you ever can do that, if you can ever actually get on top of tanks when they are not sieged with your bio and you're immediately making contact to tanks, that is always a good trade. So if this is not, but it is risky to do this though. That's why I was saying like you should probably rely more on just defending your tanks and making your opponent overextend into your tanks and then go from there. Because this is you're probably gonna kill like 4 tanks right now, maybe 5 tanks, and then you'll lose a bunch of Marines. Yeah, you just fucking got deleted, right? But you did you killed like 3 tanks there, and if you were able to keep remaxing right now, if your supply was not 139 but instead was 200 still, because you had like solid foundational macro, they would be fine. Because if you, again, it's all about tanks in TvT. Bio is just fodder, and the only way this would actually have been a problem for you to be like, oh, I lost more Marines in supply than he lost in tanks, would be if he has like Banshees now killing your fucking tanks, or like Liberators killing your tanks now, and you have nothing to deal with that. That would definitely suck. But yeah, again, it's all about the fucking tanks, and it's really hard to explain without you having enough experience. Assessment of who's going to win the fight. That really comes from experience more than anything. So in this fight particularly right now, right here, this is definitely you're playing the game, he's playing the game, you don't have perfect vision of everything, you're taking a guess, right? You're like, let's go. He's not sieged, I'm fucking going for this. But realistically, you're never going to win this fucking fight. Because he has almost as many Marines as you do, and he has like 5 times the amount of tanks that you do. So if he sieges at the same time you siege, you're 100% losing this fight, because 1 tank is worth the value. It's crazy how this sounds, but like 1 tank is exponentially worth the value of Marines. So like 1 tank can be worth like 5 Marines. 2 tanks can be worth like 12 Marines. 3 tanks can be worth like 21 Marines. 4 tanks can be worth like 32 Marines. It just keeps growing exponentially, and suddenly like 8 tanks can be worth like 75 Marines. And the reason why that works like that is because if you start getting enough tanks, you can actually kill shit before it even gets to you. Repeatedly. Like shit just gets deleted before it actually makes contact. Like over and over and over and over. Because it's like an assembly line of units coming at it, and the tanks keep deleting the front of the assembly line before it even makes contact. So it gets to a point where it gets absurd, where Marines become obsolete versus a sieged line of tanks. So the fact that you killed 3 tanks there was really nice, but I mean, you just fucking see right there how fast you get deleted. And that was not Marines. That was fucking tanks deleting your Marines. Like his Marines here were doing dog shit damage. They were like poking the front guy, but his tanks were just like, and like everything's just fucking gone. Like everything is dead. So now you're in. The last thing I was going to say was, the position you're in right now is you have control of the air, but you've absolutely lost control of the ground. The best thing you can do for yourself right now, I'm not even kidding, make like 3 or 4 Liberators. And then put them in your air group. And every time you guys have a siege line, siege whatever little tanks you have right before he gets in range to fight you back. So don't charge him and siege him. Try to zone him so you guys have a stalemate, and then just Liberator down the stalemate. It'll force him to unsiege, and if he doesn't, you'll just kill tanks, because he doesn't have air control to contest the Liberator.
Okay.
That's the only way you get out of this, because you're so far behind in tanks now. And then if you actually regain tank control, you can go back into play the Viking tank game again. That's totally fine. So air control is just as important as ground control, because if you lose air control, Liberators and Banshees would become a problem. I would recommend Liberators instead, though, because you don't have any tech labs on your starports, and it would just be faster to go Liberator. And Liberator's also probably a little safer than Banshee, because they can siege from further away than Banshee can shoot. But even, yeah, like Ground is control is really important because it's what makes the Marines obsolete, and air control is really important because if you don't have tank control, air control can win you the lack of tank control.
So does that mean? So you said that tanks are the backbone of this matchup. Does that mean for the upgrades I should prioritize the tank attack and like above the air?
Yes. Yeah, you should definitely be going tank weapons.
Okay.
The only way you should go air weapons is if you were actually going to do Sky Terran. Like, you were going to, from the start and the get-go, going to make a limited amount of tanks with mostly Liberator, Viking, stuff like that. And you were always going to guarantee you had air control. Definitely go ground weapons because your style is tank-based. Like, it's standard to be tank-based. It's a very normal way to play the game. But just keep this in mind too, okay? In a perfect army for Terran, you actually will have no Marines, even though you're 3-3.
Okay.
Like, Marines are very disposable, and all they are glorified scouts who also take hits initially for your tanks. So your tanks don't just immediately die when the clash happens, if you're not sieged yet. But if you're playing it perfectly, it doesn't even matter if you have Marines because you would already be sieged before the fight happens, and you would need Marines there if you had a lot of tanks.
Okay.
So, but you will make Marines though early on because you don't have infinity gas. So it's still going to be a big part of your army for a while. But yeah, just keep in mind though, the people who play TvT to play a Marine-based style, and they're always fixated on making the Marines do damage and Marines do this, Marines do that. That mindset only goes so far. Tank-based mindset is GM mindset. That's like top-level mindset. So you have to understand that Marines are essential, but they are replaceable. They're not the go-to. They're not like your boy. The tanks are your fucking boy in this matchup.
Would I lose air control if I didn't upgrade air weapons?
No, you would not. It's all about who has more number. Viking weapon versus Viking weapon doesn't really matter a whole lot, and the reason why is because it's a projectile unit. So there's if you guys both have a lot of Vikings, nobody, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter even if you're a fucking euthermal, nobody is going to be grabbing their Vikings and going, okay, I've calculated I need 10 Viking shots to kill a Viking with this amount of upgrades, so I'm going to manually target 10 on this target, and then the other 5 that I have, because I have 15 in total, on that target. And every 1 shot, I'm going to make my 10 group kill another Viking, and every 2 shots, I'm going to make my 5 group kill another Viking. Like, nobody will micro like that. It's not going to be perfect math every time. Everyone's going to just kind of concave out and hope for the best, because it's, if you over micro, it could be disastrous, and you just waste your time. There's more important shit you got to do. Like, make sure your tanks are not fucking horribly placed, or make sure you're macroing still. Whatever. No one's going to micro their Vikings like that. So what happens instead is it's a projectile unit, and there's always going to be overkill where even though it would have only taken 3 Viking shots to kill that Viking you're shooting at, 7 of your Vikings shoot it and it dies, but you wasted 4 of your shots unintentionally. That's going to happen all the time for everybody. And instead, what matters then is bodies make more of a difference than upgrades. Like, upgrades are still not, I'm not saying upgrades are irrelevant, but bodies matter more than upgrades when it comes to air battle. But eventually, once you have good tank upgrade, start getting air upgrades then later.
Okay.
Because, yeah, like a guy, basically, sorry, I was just to say it like this. Like, the guy who has like 10 Vikings that are 0-0 will win versus a guy who has 8 Vikings that are 1-0. All right. Well, what are you going to say? Sorry.
No, it's like another question. So it's not specific to this match, but when I move my army around from the map, like they kind of run their own way sometimes, and I'm not sure. Should I like babysit them to do shift endpoint clicks, or should I just get myself more familiar to the map and the roadblocks and stuff?
You can only do that. I would say moving them babysit style would be something you should do when you're blind. And moving them off the minimap is something you can do when you're not blind. So for instance, you see how the map right now? So you have a Marine right here. I don't think this Marine needs to be here right now. I think this Marine should be right here instead. And this Marine right here is perfect. So if you had a Marine right here, and you had a Marine where this one is right now, and you have this sensor tower to the right of where that Marine is standing. That's your sensor tower edge right there, which goes all the way over to your base. If you moved an army from like right here on the mini map all the way down to like right there to group up, it's 0 chance you're going to run into your opponent, because you have a Marine that's guarding this hallway and a Marine that's guarding this entrance to this area of the map. So the entire southwest side of the map is covered, and you know for a fact you can't have anything out there, like an army, because one of your Marines would have died otherwise.
Okay, so basically, babysit less when I have map vision.
Yes, 100%. Because if you babysit every army you do all the time, you're going to be feeling like you're always overworked, and you're like, fuck, I can't like set up these fights. I got to like make sure my armies don't fuck up. I got to make sure this is all going well, when all you got to do is make sure the entrances into that like the quadrant of the map are just covered. And that if the entrance is covered and the guy guarding the entrance is not dead, the entire quadrant of that map is completely open and it's safe. Because he would have rolled a fucking army through that Marine if he was going to be over there.
So you view the map in 4 quadrants?
Like, okay, so think about it like this. The map is a massive quadrant, right? But you can separate it with what you have. Like, the top right quadrant that is unscouted for you is literally everything above this, because that's your sensor tower below this on the mini map, and everything above it and to the left of it is his. So this Marine right now does cover this specific location, but you have no idea if he's here. And this sensor tower controls if he goes here. If he touches that ramp even for a second, you will see that. And if he goes above this ramp, your Marine will see it. Or if he goes up on the ramp, like a little bit south of it, once again, your sensor tower will pick it up. So this is an unscouted quadrant. And I would say the second you go right here or right here, you got to babysit, because this whole quadrant is unscouted and you have no idea. However, if you had a Marine standing right there and a Marine standing right there, it would make everything to the right of that over here all safe, because nothing he could do could be over here without killing that Marine first, or that Marine first.
Okay.
So you just want to make sure wherever he could go, you're making sure he isn't there, because you're watching the doorway of him going through it. That's where your Marine should be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so like Marine, like if you had a Marine standing like, for instance, like right there or like right here, this would be a terrible place to stand, because you don't cover that door and you don't even cover that door. It's just like randomly in the middle of nowhere. So this guy could run down this way and you wouldn't know about it, or he could run up this way and you wouldn't know about it. So you definitely would want to cover like that door, and suddenly now those 2 entrances to that area of the map are now covered until they die. And then if they die, now you got to be safe about it and be like, what's over there? Like, is he pushing me on that side? And you got to be, then that's when you babysit. But like, I just want you to be, I want to make sure you're not having like a stalemate push here and you have quadrants covered properly where it's like doorways, and then you're like really meticulously moving your army over here when nothing can even be there in the first place, because you're just wasting time doing that then.
Okay.
Also, I would say, just as a frame of reference, if there are multiple tanks, like I think 4 is a good number. If there's like 4 tanks shelling your PF and you don't have the intention to pounce that, evacuate the base. Like if you don't think you're going to have an army that's going to be within about the next 15 seconds or 20 seconds, somewhere in that time frame, able to capitalize on that and pounce on that and kill that, just run the SCVs away from this base while the PF is taking damage, because you actually lost all your SCVs here and your PF when this was a dead PF from the start, because you didn't even have any intention to defend it.
Okay.
That's just like a waste for you at that point. But you'd be better off just evacuating and setting up a tank line at the next location. Yeah, and now you're starting to fall behind only because you're now behind on bases. So you're actually at a disadvantage when it comes to an economic position. And it looks like you're about to engage a bunch of fucking tanks with Marines again, which is just only going to go badly. Oh, you backed up. Okay. You still could win this game right now. Your existing everything you have could win the game, but the only way to make it happen would be the same way we've been talking about. You'd need to scout ahead. Like, here's an example of what I mean too when this is happening. To be meticulous, take one Marine, stim pack it, and make sure, like, when you move forward like this, your one Marine that's like, just the one Marine that's stim packed is running like, your army is right where it is right now, and that one Marine's right there. And then when your army is where it is now, that one Marine would be like right there. Because he's running faster, because he's stim packed. So you want to make sure you're not about to run into his army and not be sieged. Because if you see his army pushing and you siege first, pull your Marines back, leave your air a little bit ahead of it, and if you don't alert him to go, hey, let's fucking fight. Like, I'm going to make my Marines fight your Marines. If you just let him walk into tank fire, if he doesn't react to that immediately, you'll snap off like 30 Marines or 20 Marines. And that could just be a win condition automatically, again. Because you then compromise all of his tanks.
Yeah.
So you moving out forward like this with your whole army clumped up like that is kind of scary. That was a good siege. He didn't react to it, so you're getting a great fight here. And that was, this right here, that was a very good stim forward because you just wiped out a massive chunk of his army. So now the Marines, and he's also not even sieged, which is even better. Those two things together definitely capitalize on that and stim pack just like you are right now. This is great stutter step. Like that logical decision making, super good. The best thing you could do behind this now would be immediately unsiege these tanks and get them to start moving forward as well, so you don't waste time while you're doing this. You can just do it with a hotkey, like be like one tab on siege, stutter step forward, stutter step forward. Because right now, notice how he's making a new tank line. The last thing you should fucking do is push that. The best thing you can do is siege a new tank line, zone him out of this base, and don't let him have it. If you push that tank line, you're gonna lose all your bio. And your tanks are now here. And if the guy doesn't take the base, you can always go to a different base. Like, the fact that you're scouting this is great. Relocate over to that side and do it again. That's totally fine. Whatever you like, whatever works really. This army could do it as well. You have another huge army. You could have this army go to the right. This army could pounce on this location still and guard it while he has to then deal with it, while that army could go up and around and siege that base and guard it. Like, guard this location while you siege it. And I would highly recommend putting, like, one of your armies on group 1 and one of your armies on group 3 for this. Just instead of doing a drop, do a second attack with another earlier. Because you're already used to using 1 and 3. And you don't need to be dropping one if you're doing like a multi-point attack. And like this right here, this shouldn't be dealt with your whole army. This should be dealt with rallies. Whatever your rallies are. Deal with it with that. Do not turn around and go home to deal with that. Because positioning is because see what's happening right now is you're turning around and you're going home, and now he's here, and if he unsieges and groups up his army and resieges right there, you're fucked, because he'll be sieged on the command center, and you can't protect it without running into tanks, which is going to make you take a massive loss. And that might be exactly what he does.
I think I just
Yeah.
Like, at this point of the game, I'm just so confused about where should I go, where is this stuff.
Yeah, and that's going to happen as well if you don't have Marine Scouts. So Marine Scouts need to... So one thing you need to stop doing is stop using Select All Army. Use a rally point location and grab shit from the rally point, and then... Like, you don't have to use a hotkey for the rally point. I'm just saying have a generic rally point location for everything to go. And then reinforce your armies with the rally point. Like if group 1, for instance, is looking a little thin, and you got like 3 more tanks and 15 more Marines. Green box it, shift 1, right click where group 1 is, while group 1 is currently still sieged here. Reinforce it, and then when the other tanks arrive, siege those as well. And now suddenly group 1's strong again. But it's really all about controlling the map with siege locations. It's not about roaming with one army and just moving shit down with Stimpack and like trying to get like a decent engagement. It's always about predicting where the engagement is going to be and forcing a good engagement with siege lines. now this is obviously going to be a terrible engagement because you're caught between a PF that's getting repaired and his whole army. And you also had no tanks there, so... And the Vikings now. Vikings, I'm going to also say this. Vikings are completely worthless if you don't have tanks. That's something you want to keep in mind. You probably want to stop making Vikings when you have a clear lead and start making them again when it seems like you need to make more. Try to balance that as much as you can, but try never to have so many fucking Vikings that you just have way too many and you don't have enough of the other shit that you actually need, like tanks. Because Viking is actually really good if you have a lot of tanks to support it, but if you have no tanks, this unit is actually fucking awful.
Okay.
Alright, you have any final questions, Shingy?
No, I think I got everything down. Basically, first scan should be at 6 minutes to show who's gonna play what's that called, aggressive,
Yep.
or who's gonna play defensive.
Yeah.
And then the first Hellion thing could dive, I guess, to trade as much as possible, and then have stuff at home to defend. And then after that, it's the mid game. So the mid game is it's the mid game again, trying to set up siege tank lines.
Yes, the mid game is basically keeping out siege tank defense. That's all it is. The mid game is literally always having your bio spot for where your sensor towers are not already covering, just to make sure you don't get caught off guard. And every time your opponent tries to push you, you are already you've seen it, and you're ready to go with tanks ready to catch it. Because if you ever get caught unprotected, like where you're like, oh shit, he's there. Wait, what? Oh, my third's dead. You fucked up with your scouting. Like your bio was not spread properly. You didn't have a marine in a location it should have been at, and you were blind, and you're now paying the price for it, which is you're dying. So it's all about making the tank count grow, bio spreads out, and then you can play it aggressively or defensively. It doesn't matter how you play that style out. Just make sure you never leave your side of the map unknown. You don't ever want to have a bunch of fog near your base and then just go, you know what, time to push mid-map, and suddenly he pushes your base and you're like, well, shit, I'm dead now. You always want to make sure you're able to zone him before he gets to where he wants to be. Because, again, whoever has siege tanks actually sieged in the fight before it happens is 99% of the time going to win that fight. The only way you can counter that is with, like, insane micro through ravens or through carpet dropping, which is way above fucking 3,700. No one's going to do that shit. Like, at most, someone might use a raven decently, and even that's going to be, like, just, like, hard to do. Like, most people are going to fuck that up, too. People in GM still fuck that up. So, or go ahead, sorry.
So, so mid game is to spread and get vision, and then for instance, if I see that he is pushing me, what I'll try to do is to find where he's going to push and set up the siege line before he arrives there, and then create this stalemate, and then use my rally to go and poke him on the other side.
Yep.
The win condition of this is trying to set up a siege line that touches his bases or economies. Is that the correct?
Yeah, well, you can always relocate it. So, like, every time he goes and defends somewhere, if he's not at one of your pushes, always, like, if you don't have vision ahead of your push, always do what I said, where you, like, stim one marine, and you push safely. So you're not pushing blindly with your whole army into, like, possibly running right into him. You have, like, 3 seconds to react and go, oh, well, that's enough time to siege. So if he kills that one scout marine that was stimmed, I can siege before he actually jumps on my tanks. And now suddenly you once again have a tank line that's sieged up and ready to take a good trade for you. But yeah, the win condition is literally just to have more money than your opponent so that you can always remake more tank, marine, Viking, all that shit. And he can't because he'll run out of money. So it's always about defending your base if you have to. If you're on the defensive side, you totally can be. It's very realistic. Try to take good trades defensively by having good positioning, and then if you take good trades and your opponent fucks up, you can push quickly. And if your opponent does not fuck up and it becomes a stalemate, you can either slow push him with air control and slowly crawl your tanks forward with your whole army, or you can do a counter push, stalemate the main army, and have your reinforcement rallies, instead of reinforcing the army, run around the map and go push somewhere else. the same way you would have pushed your first army. So have one Marine stem forward ahead of it. And like once you're in unknown terrain. And if you have stalemates everywhere, the only option then is to slow push with Vikings and shit like that. And do you understand how that concept works?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, get vision and leapfrog the tanks.
Yeah, because the tank has 13 attack range, but it only has like 10 vision. So you have like that dead zone of range where your Viking can cover that, and you can move your tank into max attack range, and you'll shoot him when he can't see you if you have air control. And the only way he can see you is if he scans, if he has no air units.
Okay. Cool.
But ideally, yeah, like I would say slow pushing should be your last resort. You should focus more on stalemating and counterattacking instead. And then if your opponent starts crippling to the counterattack and he gets out of the stalemate and he's like, fuck, I got to go defend that, push into the base deeper and go hit another location and set that up again. And if you get to a point where you start killing his bases, you will always be able to rebuild what dies, and he won't. And eventually, if you start realizing his army is really tiny, you can start just doing initially what I told you not to do. But at this point, it doesn't matter because you'll just have overwhelming amounts of supply. You can start stimming in on top of his siege lines and sieging your tanks as they get in range as well, and you'll win the game anyways. Because at that point, if it's like 6 base for you versus like 3 for him, and he's like mining out, you could start getting pretty aggressive there and just finish the game off, essentially, if you wanted to. Or you could slow push it still, and that would also be fine. But yeah, TvT, it's not like other matchups of Terran. It's kind of like, seriously, like a chess game. You have to play this tank line game, because if you don't, the only way around this is to just like doom drop constantly and just like hope for the best, and that's not gonna probably go very far. Like you'll probably struggle a lot with playstyles like that.
Okay.
Yeah, tanks are huge.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Does that? Do you have any other questions, or how you feeling?
No, that's it. I feel like I learned the main thing is I identified my biggest problem. I think is the control grouping thing.
Yeah.
And I got the concept clearer, like how to win, like what to do through the mid game and then late game. And on top of that, the concept of map quadrants is really refreshing. Because when I'm looking at the minimap right now, I could actually notice that there are the entrances of areas. Like before, I was just like this place, that place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just keep practicing.
Because in TvT as well, no one's gonna, like, if the guy's gonna doom drop you, you're gonna know he's gonna doom drop you because it's gonna be his style like a lot of the game. It's really unlikely that the guy's gonna suddenly out of nowhere have like 16 medevacs and he's gonna load up a 200 supply army and doom drop you, and you're gonna be like, wait, my Marine never saw that. That's very unlikely. Most of the time, your opponent's gonna have an army rolling around with maybe like 4 medevacs above or 2 medevacs above just to cover the stim pack healing that needs to be done. And then it's just going to roll through your Marine if it's going to go that way. So you would note it. It's like a tripwire. Oh, he's over there. So he's there now. And now I know that quadrant is now compromised and I need to play safer in that area.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, man. And yeah, just always keep in mind when your opponent's fixated on one area, this is the biggest tip I'll give you, okay? Then I think we'll be done here. If you are stalemating an area, it is way less control requiring from you to control that. Like, you don't need to be managing everything in that fight. You can have your Marines near the tanks, and as soon as you see he tries on the minimap, his blob of stuff starts washing over your blob, move your Marines forward into it, and that's it. And then you're good to go. And then if he pulls back, you can pull back. But be a little bit more assertive about like playing the minimap then. When you see he's really fixated on a stalemate, get a group of units going across the map to set up another fight in an area where you know it's okay to push. And then once you're there, then pay attention to it for a second, set it up, and then if you do that a few times, so many people will fucking break. Because people will get overwhelmed with just one tank push, and if you're doing 2 of them, because you're not really you're not over-investing into just the one all the time, they'll start falling apart and losing bases, and that's how you easily win the game.
Okay, so basically don't think stalemate. Don't take that much pressure on a stalemate on my side. Like worst case happening is opponent goes in and then he also would lose units.
Exactly. That's perfect. The worst thing that can happen to you in a stalemate is that your units that die are going to kill more than what they cost. As long as you're sieged.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I hope it helps you. I hope it helps you imagine how to play TvT and you start having more success with it.
Yeah, if it doesn't work out, I might just ask you to teach me how to proper do a proxy to Reaper, and I'll just do
Yeah.
it for the
Fuck yeah, dude. You're the proxy to your X guy. One thing as well I wanted to say one more time, because it sounded like you were a little hesitant on what it meant, was the Reaper Hellion phase of the game.
Mhm.
The only time you should be defensive with Reaper Hellion until you have something that can replace it, like Cyclone Marine or some shit, is if your opponent also makes multi-Reaper and he shows you that and he's not wasting the Reaper. The second he wastes the Reaper and it's only the one Reaper and he just suicides it and it's actually going to die and he kills like an SCV for it or tries to, that dude's not going Reapers. He's only using that for scouting and he doesn't want to play the Reaper phase of the game anymore. He just wanted to see what you were doing so that he could be like, oh, I need a Raven for a Banshee maybe or whatever.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely be aggressive if he throws the Reaper away.
Mhm.
All right, yeah, man. I'll, like I always do, I'll upload this to YouTube by probably tomorrow or maybe the day after, and then when I do, I'll send you a link again on Discord for you to have it.
Okay.
And thanks again for always doing a lesson, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get the masters, like eventually, I guess.
Yeah, no, you can do it. Honestly, you definitely have the dedication for it. So keep at it, and and if you can't do it, just play Protoss, and you'll get it in a week.
Okay. Cool.
All right, I'll see you next time, man.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
All right, later, man.
Later.
All right, guys, that has been a coaching lesson with Shengi. Shout out to Shengi for doing it, and thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Terran players out there, hope it helped you as well. This has been a diamond, like an upper diamond level coaching lesson. So I will see you guys in the next thing, whatever it is. Much love. Thanks for watching, and good luck. Peace, guys.